Audio made possible by www.jackettome.com. Warning. The following has suggestive content that is not suitable for some listeners. Audio Fanfiction Productions presents Wide Awake. Fanfiction written by Angskata003. Fanfiction inspired by the Twilight Saga written by Stephanie Meyer. Chapter 32. Brownie Drop Defeats.
Edward's point of view. It was a pretty nice day outside, and I was really fucking hoping it was some kind of omen as I made my way to the gazebo at noon. I still wore my jacket, just in case my girl got cold. I didn't bring anything else with me, because all I really needed were my hands. She was already there waiting for me. When I approached, her shirt was a problem. It was blue, and looked a lot like the one she wore last time, but with a low neckline that would allow skin-to-skin contact if I wasn't really careful. If she decided to go through with it, which she probably fucking would. She had her hair up this time, most likely anticipating where I wanted to go and not feeling up to slapping it out of her face. She rose from the bench with her bag on her back when I made it to her. She still had the same sadness in her eyes that had grown over the last week. I just held my hand out to her. "Would you follow me?" She did, slipping her little hand into mine, and stepping to my side willingly. That was another thing about this whole fucked up situation. My girl put all of her trust in me, and I was really hoping that I wasn't doing something to compromise that as I helped her into the boat silently. I studied her while I rowed us downstream. She loved looking out at the forest while she was in the boat. I could already tell. I rowed slower than normal just so she could see more of it, trying to make her as relaxed as possible. She looked so fucking beautiful in her normal girl outfit. The blue looked so good with her skin, making her look a little less pale than usual. Her straight dark hair flowed from her ponytail, leaving her neck and ears completely uncovered. The collarbones were there, and a little bit of cleavage, but I tried not to wiggle them, because they drove me fucking crazy, and this wasn't about me. When we reached the bank, I helped her out, grabbing her by the waist, and lifting her over the water, so she wouldn't get her little feet wet. She smiled a little as I set her down and took her hand again. I smiled back, because it was little, but it was something. She stiffened infinitesimally as we reached the quasi-meadow, but still followed beside me as I made my way to the same tree in the middle. Once her bag was off, I pulled her down with me against the tree trunk, just like last time, as I snaked my arm around her waist and pulled her into me. I allowed us a few moments of silence before I brought it up, leaning down and smelling all her flowers and cookies from the top of her ponytail, and dropping her arm in something I hoped was a relaxing gesture. She sighed and leaned into me as I caressed her, because that shit always relaxed her. And it was a damn good thing, because I was probably going to be doing a lot of it. I ran my fingers through my hair with my free hand, and gazed out at the grass of the meadow, wondering how the fuck I was going to bring something like that up. Simplicity. "Do you want me to try to touch you again?" I asked bluntly. No bullshit. Just a question. She didn't move, or even really say anything for a moment, until finally her head slowly swiveled around to meet my gaze. Her big brown eyes looked pretty fucking skeptical.
"Really?"
She quirked an eyebrow at me incredulously. I nodded cautiously down at her with pursed lips. "There's this technique I read about that could maybe work for us," I explained cautiously, hoping she wouldn't ask why I was even reading shit like that, but needing her to know there was more to it than just grabbing. And it was like whatever cloud that had been darkening her face and mood for the last week completely fucking dissipated. Her face lit up into a huge fucking smile, and her eyes shone with excitement. And I was kind of expecting her to blush or some shit, because my girl was like that. But she didn't. She began practically vibrating with enthusiasm in a way that made want to chuckle and roll my eyes. She looked fucking thrilled. I had never in my entire life seen a girl so goddamn excited about being felt up before. It was so ridiculous. It was so cute. It was so my girl. She turned to me fully with a big excited grin, still doing the vibrating thing, and nodding at me in a way that made all her dark hair bounce around from the ponytail. I hated to be a buzzkill. "You have to fucking listen to me very carefully," I said seriously as I looked over at her. I half expected her to just jut her chest out at me and hold her hands up in offering. Instead she tried to stifle her grin and nodded at me, pulling away enough to sit at my side Indian style, listening to my instructions intently. And kind of fucking jutting her chest out. I sighed and shook my head, really hating that she was getting so excited because there was no certainty. "Okay." I began slowly, rubbing my hand over my face for a moment before turning to face her. She was still vibrating a little, but I tried to block it out. "This is a process, so don't get fucking frustrated when it doesn't just work," I explained the best I could. Her grin fell a bit before she rolled her eyes at me.
Right. Technique, process, don't get frustrated, might not work.
She waved a hand dismissively, and perked her grin back up.
"What do I do?"
she asked enthusiastically. I rolled my eyes at her. She was definitely going to get frustrated, and I was going to feel like shit for it. But it was too fucking late now. "Have you ever heard of a safe word?" I asked, trying to imagine my girl watching dom porn, or some shit. Of course she shook her head, pursing her lips in curiosity. I fought back at grimace. "You're going to pick a word that's in no way related to what we're doing," I explained, knowing that I wanted her to choose it since she'd be using it. She furrowed her brows for a moment, still pursing her lips and looking so much fucking happier than I had seen her all week.
"Cookie."
She nodded decisively, still grinning. I bit back a massive snicker at the particular use of verbiage and nodded in approval. So, I started getting to the part where she realized how serious I was being. "When you start to feel uncomfortable," I used the best word I could think of to describe her panic. "You say cookie," I instructed, watching as she furrowed her brows and nodded. I raised my eyebrows at her. "If at any point you say cookie, I'll stop. No questions asked, no fucking frustration," I continued, and then after a pause, narrowed my eyes at her expression. "And I fucking mean it. If you just persevere it won't work," I explained, just knowing that she would try to soldier on without saying anything, and it would be ineffective. She bit her lip and frowned slightly.
"You'll keep trying though, right?"
she pleaded. I fought the urge to sigh in exasperation, and instead nodded at her, because it might take me all fucking day, but I would keep trying. Her smile returned, and she nodded her compliance. I was pleased she was beginning to take it a little more seriously, even though the vibrating was still there. I could see some skepticism in her features. "Get out your iPod," I instructed softly, watching her remove the shiny blue device from her sack with pursed lips and glancing at me curiously. Probably wondering what the iPod had to do with getting groped. "Something relaxing," I explained, as she quirked an eyebrow at me and put the earbuds in. I sighed again, and leaned back against the tree with my legs spread out in front of me and grabbed her hand, guiding her between my slightly parted legs and into my lap so her back was to my chest. I grabbed her shoulders and pulled her down completely onto my chest, moving her ponytail out of the way in the process. I didn't know what song she chose, but I had plenty of soothing shit on that thing. She reluctantly lolled her head back onto my shoulder, so that her ear was right by my mouth. My girl was so fucking light. I don't know how she managed it with all the goddamn cookies and food she cooked. She removed the earbud closest to my mouth. I suppose so she could hear my instruction. Not there was any past this particular point. I grabbed both of her hands and put them at my sides, palms down on the grass. The most important part of the whole fucking thing was making her relaxed. So I began rubbing her arms slowly and soothingly up and down. After a few passes up her arms, I began working on her shoulders, massaging them gently, and feeling when her breathing became more deep and relaxed. I slowly worked my way up to her bare neck, running my fingertips up to her ears, and back down in a trail, returning to her hands, where I'd even massaged her little fingers a little bit too. I continued the circuit a few times, from her knuckles to her ears, before she was completely limp on top of me. I was almost afraid she fell asleep, but I didn't hear her signature soft snore, so I knew she wasn't. Keeping true to my own method, I decided